Hello and welcome to episode 4 in the Endless Possibilities podcast. My name is Gareth and I'm here with my good friend Eva, who's a very gifted energy healer. Hi Eva.
Hi everybody.
So today's episode we're going to be talking all about energy transmissions and energy healing and energy work.
Yeah,
so
we got in the last podcast we got a lot of questions, and one of them was all about let's talk about transmission, talk about healing, energy healing, because it's such an interesting topic. And so we decided to pick this one and make a whole podcast out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is what we specialize in, Eva. This is my background is transmission. I work with multiple transmissions, including Shaktipat. I work with light to awaken consciousness, and I work with the supramental force. So do you want to talk just a little bit about your end from working with the energies?
Yeah, I mean, when I started meditating with you, you were basically the first one when I really got into this, you were working with transmissions. So I was exposed to transmissions from the beginning, and I just saw, the progress can be so much faster by being exposed to transmissions. So, and I was only doing that, and it really works. So, yeah.
Okay, so I guess what we should start with is, what are energy transmissions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what are energy transmissions? So an energy transmission is energy that comes through and has an information in it. And the information basically gets transmitted to somebody's system, and the system picks up that information and can reform its own information, if you want to call it like that. Yeah, it transforms just the whole human system. That's what these transmissions do.
Yeah, and what I would say is, so when a master or a teacher or a realized being, once they have realized the absolute truth, their consciousness is now illuminated. Okay, so when they close their eyes, they're not seeing just blackness. There is an illumination of what they are, their consciousness, and that's what they have realized, the ultimate truth. So what can then happen is that realized being is able to penetrate the consciousness of the aspirant or the student. And the way I would see it is that the consciousness of the aspirants, their consciousness is, it has obstructions in the way, and the transmission will remove the obstructions, and illuminate the consciousness as well. So it's the fastest way to accelerate the spiritual progress.
Yeah, and you use different kind of transmissions, right, for that? So which ones are you using? Yes.
I mean, I give a number of different transmissions. So, I mean, there's endless different transmissions. There's healing transmissions. There's transmissions to awaken Kundalini. There's transmissions to awaken consciousness. And then the last one I work with is what's known as the supramental force, or the SAT. And that's truth consciousness that enters from beyond creation, and it comes down and it pulls the soul of the aspirant back into the absolute. Yeah. So I guess what we could then move on to is,
I can share about the transmission I work with.
Sure.
So my transmission is all about healing the human system, and I work with the Divine Mother, so I draw it down from the Divine Mother directly. So to me, it's also like love, light, and the highest truth that we can access, and I'm transmitting this to the client, and these transmissions are transforming the system.
Yeah, and Eva, so then let's talk about who can give these transmissions.
Yeah, I mean, the transmissions we give, you have to, like the spiritual path, all those levels of consciousness, you have to go through them, experience them, and finish them basically. So the Brahman and then the Bara Brahman. And when you're in the Bara Brahman, you can bring back those forces of the highest truth, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So you would say truth, consciousness, and bliss, or
Yes.
maybe you use just different words to bring.
Yeah, I call them love, light, and truth. So that's
Yeah.
how I call them,
Yeah.
because these are the highest vibrations. Yeah. So that's how I call them.
Yeah, brilliant. And I guess anybody really can give a transmission, though, okay? Because like we've all been around negative people, and quickly you'll realize that you don't feel so good around negative people, that you know the vibration in that situation can make you come away feeling less than how you did.
Yeah, I mean, all what we do is energy exchange, right? So when we talk, there's an energy to exchange. So it's just about the intention. Okay, I sit down and I transmit now a certain kind of energy. That's just a different way of exchanging energy, I guess. Yeah. So
and healing as well. So again, anybody can heal. Anybody can use their intent. Anybody can transmit. I mean, if you're around like a funny person, you know, and you're in their company, you go away feeling energized and happy. And so it's like anybody can transmit. And one of the first transmissions is like when someone reaches self-realization. They are able to talk from the level of the self. They can abide in the self, and they can transmit that self to other people. So when they sit and give satsang or they talk in spiritual communities, there's a transmission of presence that can be felt in the words. The words are sort of like a pointing, and there's also a presence of stillness that's coming from that person who's abiding in that level of self.
Yeah, and it's also because if you sit with somebody, you have the intention to receive this higher level or this higher knowledge, and that's why you're receiving it, and the other person can transmit it. So it goes both ways. Yes.
Yeah. And okay, so who should receive these energy transmissions, Eva? Who would benefit the most from coming to see you?
Yeah, so everybody can receive my healing energy transmissions. Everybody who wants to receive healing, it doesn't matter if you're like on the spiritual path and you want to meditate and evolve on the spiritual path, or if you like have a physical problem or problems are appearing in your life experience, then you can just come, and the energies, they work in your system and they help you to transform yourself towards more truth, your inner truth, basically, and the higher truth. And yeah, so that's like the base of the sessions, one-on-one or group sessions or meditation. It's always this transmission, and they are working by themselves. They have a higher intelligence and they work on the human system. And I'm basically assisting these energies to get the work done. Yeah, that's how I see it. How do you see it from your perspective?
So if I go back to the original question of who can receive the transmissions, so basically what we're saying is for the healing transmissions, it's beneficial for everybody to come.
Yes.
Anybody can come and receive the healing transmissions.
Yes, it can be like animals, it can be babies, it can be like old people, people who are like can't move or talk anymore, like also like in that kind of way. Yeah, everybody can receive them.
Okay, so and then I guess from my side, the main people who will benefit from the spiritual transmissions are dedicated spiritual seekers. Because from my experience, there needs to be a certain level of ripeness in that aspirant. And they have to find these transmissions by themselves. It sort of can't be that, you know, somebody buys them a session and the person comes and sits down, because their systems won't be opened yet to the transmissions.
But it's the same for me though. People who come, they need to come because they want to, you know. I mean, I have people sending friends and family, and they're like, some of them are really open, and some of them, okay, I see whatever happens, I don't really believe in it. I mean, you don't have to believe in it, but there just needs to be a certain openness to receive, you know. That's the thing, to receive. Yeah, and then it works.
And I guess for a lot of people, the only way to feel or to know that these energies are working is to actually feel them, to have a direct experience and go, oh, and this is what happens in energy transmissions. In the beginning, when your system is not that open, you don't really feel a whole lot, or you might just feel a little bit, or the first kind of sense that you're feeling energy is probably just a deep sense of relaxation and peace in the system. But then it'll progress further along the lines where they become very rapturous and, you know, take over your whole system. So, I mean, like, okay, so for me, I guess people of a certain level of spirituality or a level of consciousness benefit. And I guess people who aren't at that level yet, they're just not going to be interested in this kind of work, right?
Yeah, they won't be sitting there for an hour and receiving transmissions. No.
Yeah, they'll just be doing something else. So what I notice in my group is that most of the people who come, their level of consciousness is already pretty high, and they have an interest in this. They're serious spiritual seekers. They've probably exhausted all other avenues. They've probably done, you know, satsang or done other, you know, self-help practices, or have been sitting in meditation for years. And then all of a sudden they come across spiritual transmission, and the spiritual transmission basically just accelerates it. It's like gasoline on the fire.
Yes. The transmission are just like totally accelerating the progress. It's like it's a shortcut, not a shortcut in that kind of way, but it just helps you. If you sit without a transmission, you can probably sit for years, but if you have the transmission, it just helps to transform the system. And yeah, you're getting additional help. And yeah.
Yeah, and Eva, like, let's talk about all the benefits of what's happening when you're receiving a transmission. Like, what's going on? How does it start out? Like, what are we feeling? What sort of changes is it making in your system?
Yeah. So people mostly feel it in the body. So if they like sit with a transmission, then they often ask, okay, what should I do? What should I focus on? And I say, focus on the body, focus on body sensations in different areas of the body. I mean, when I like work on one-on-ones, I tell people where I work, so they will know, and they might, if they can already feel energies, they can feel it in those areas. And if it's a meditation or group session, they don't know where I'm working, but they can just feel, okay, stuff is pulled out of the system, stuff gets removed, stuff gets put in. They just feel it energetically. They feel it in the body, basically. And also the transmission, my transmission, honestly, it's not mine, but the one I transmit is felt in every cell of the body. So people report they felt it like champagne bubbles in the cells. The cells are dancing. So that's how they report they feel it. And some people, they don't feel it, but after a while it just comes in, because it has to do with the nervous system. The nervous system has to adapt. And then after a while, most people, I mean, there are one or two, who don't feel it. That's just their systems, but most people pick it up. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, same for my retreats as well. Like, I could have 30 people come to the retreats, and I've got one. Last September I had one person. Most of the people who come to my retreats, they, especially the longer ones, they've been part of my group for quite some time. And we had one person who came in who'd never been to any of my things, and they arrived, and for 5 days they didn't feel anything, and everybody else is having all these amazing, beautiful experiences. But when they left, the transmissions had an effect. They felt different afterwards. They started to feel some mild bliss coming in, and so that was sort of like, oh, there's definitely something happening. Okay, I sat there for 5 days. I witnessed everybody else having all these profound experiences, energy and laughter and crying, while they were feeling nothing. But after they left, the transmission had done enough in their system that they started to feel different.
Yeah, definitely. So maybe they don't feel the transmission in the moment, but of course the work is done anyways. Like the work is done, you know,
the work is done.
Yes.
And I guess, look, I just to go over, my first experience with transmission was over 10 years ago, and I didn't even know anything about transmission. And I went to Spain to see Tom Campbell, and I sat with Tom. I think it was like 4 or 5 days he was given. Now this was just a seminar. This was a talk. And I came away different. I remember being on the plane going home, and one of the first things I noticed that I had less fear in my system. When I closed my eyes to meditate, my consciousness was deeper. I was able to, get into deeper states of meditation much, much faster. And I remember thinking, wow, that's what happens when you're in the company of a really highly evolved being.
Mm.
So I had no understanding of what spiritual transmission was, but after spending 4 days in Tom's company, I was different, and I could tell that I was different.
Yeah, I mean that's such a great experience, isn't it? You are with somebody, and you go there, you enjoy your time, you learn so much, and then you go, and when it integrates in your everyday life, you just feel different. You feel the differences. Yeah, and that's just so cool to see.
Yeah, and this wasn't meditation. This was just him talking about his theory of everything, and just sitting with him, being in his company. I was the better for it. So I guess then we should probably talk about like how I got introduced to transmissions, maybe. Just to go from there. So it wasn't until probably about 7 or 8 years later that I discovered Shaktipat. Kundalini, this thing of Kundalini kept coming up. I had already gone through a number of spiritual awakenings, and the next stage, all of a sudden, transmission. I started to see Mother Mira was popping up on my Facebook feeds, and then all of a sudden, Kundalini. Kundalini was coming up for me all the time, just popping into my awareness. And I discovered that I could receive a transmission to speed up the process of Kundalini awakening. So I started to research Shaktipat, and I came across a teacher from Copenhagen, Jan Esman, who was doing a Shaktipat intensive in Dublin. And I went to see Jan. I did a 3-day intensive with Jan. And I mean, the first day sitting with Jan, when I closed my eyes and meditated, I could feel, oh, there's definitely something going on. My consciousness is being enhanced. My meditation feels deeper just sitting in the group. I went through 3 days of sitting with Jan, and when I left, that's when I really noticed the difference. I mean, and on the last day, everything had changed. I had energy running around my body. The cells of my body were alive. I had bliss in my brain, like bliss in my face. And this was all from receiving an energy transmission, literally meditating in a group with a realized being who could transmit this energy from his consciousness to my consciousness. And it really accelerated everything.
So you had a very profound experience of the transmission right away. Yeah, really, really nice. I mean, I just share because I went to one of Jan's retreats in the beginning when I started, and during the retreat I didn't really feel much. And afterwards, of course, I could see that some changes were happening, but at the retreat, I don't know, I guess my system wasn't so prepared yet. So it also can happen, right? But I know it did something, definitely. So
yeah. And just also to say that while I was there, I did talk to other people, and I was like, are you feeling what I'm feeling? And a lot of them didn't feel what I was feeling. There was a few that definitely were, but there was definitely some who just didn't. They were just sat there going, what's happening? I don't know. I'm just sat in a room meditating with everybody. But for me, my consciousness changed, and over the next number of months, I went into states of ecstatic bliss. I mean, I had so much bliss in my system that it felt like I had won some sort of like spiritual lottery. I was like, wow, this is incredible. It was like I had been given some kind of designer drug that just had changed everything. I couldn't get over how amazing this was.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the benefit is that it will speed up your spiritual progress really, really fast. Some more of the benefits, and again, depending on what the transmission is, there's one that will speed up the awakening of Kundalini. There's one that will speed up your consciousness. It will accelerate spiritual awakening. You know, it'll bring you into self-realization, and all through them levels of consciousness up to unity consciousness, let's say.
Yeah, and then it's also interesting, or it's also important to mention, to be exposed as much as possible or as often as possible. So best would be every day, meditating every day with a transmission for an hour or something like that, and just being in the energy, connecting to the energy over and over again. It can be in different kind of ways. It can be, you know, on a Zoom meditation, can be on YouTube. It can be with intent if people can do it, some people can do it. Yeah, so it's all about being exposed all the time, as much as possible. Also, maybe, you know, while driving the car, listening to this podcast, there is also a transmission in it, or other podcasts where transmissions are in it. It's just being exposed to these energies all the time. So yeah, that's really important.
Yeah, and it it doesn't actually, it's not that you even have to meditate. It can be just listening to myself and Eva talking about these transmissions that will start that energy transmission in your system, and it'll actually introduce you to the energies, right?
Yes, definitely. So it's listening to this, you're receiving consciousness and healing energies at the same time, basically. Yeah, and your system is getting transformed. So very handy.
Yeah, the system is being transformed. Okay, so let's talk about how these transmissions would speed up. And I don't like to use the word enlightenment, but for the sake of today's podcast, we'll call it enlightenment. So how do they speed? I'll just let me briefly just say why I don't like to use the word enlightenment, because a lot of people have the idea that enlightenment is a final destination and you get there and you're finished. And that's not really the case. There is no end game. But just for the sake of, while we're talking about these transmissions and what they do, we'll just use the word enlightenment. And I just want to ask the question to Eva is then, how do the transmissions speed up the process of enlightenment?
Yeah, I mean, as we said before, being exposed to these transmissions just help to transform the system towards enlightenment. If they're exposed to your transmissions, right? Because they have a certain information in them, and that information manifests in the system. So if you if somebody meditates with you, or you have a session and you give them, for example, a light transmission or Shakti bath, it's a different information in the energy than somebody would come to me and receive the healing energies. So it's all about the information. It's coming from the same source, you know, it's just the information is different. And yeah.
So okay, so the energy is a metaphor for information.
Yeah.
So we feel these transmissions, and when we feel them, we sort of use the word energy. We're feeling energy in our systems, but it's not. Energy is just a metaphor for information. So if we can imagine that the aspirant or the seeker's consciousness is obscured, okay, it's sort of like sealed off from the illuminated consciousness that from all that is. And when you meditate with somebody or you receive an energy transmission, that being or that teacher is removing the obstacles and is able to pull them higher energies or information down into your system, to reprogram your consciousness, to basically remember what it is before it became obscured. Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm doing exactly the same, but towards having a healed system, you know?
Yeah.
So it's exactly, yeah.
The human, the being
Yes.
part.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess
So
we should
maybe we can
go
talk
ahead.
about how we perceive energies, because people have been asking, okay, do we see lights, or how do we perceive them, right? And some people do see lights, some people see colors, some people see beings, visions. I don't know, everybody's a bit different. How I perceive it, I just know, I feel them in like the body, and
Yeah.
I just know that they're there, and I know what informations they have. So different energies are coming in for different people, for different purposes in a healing session, and they have different information, and I know the information. I just know it's there. Yeah, so that's how I perceive it. How do you perceive it, Gareth?
I mean, I perceive the energy, especially Shakti. So Shakti feels to me like it's a warm blanket, very much like wrapped around the body. I feel it very much on the outside, sort of like, yeah, a warm, cuddly blanket. It's kind of weighted. It feels very loving and very feminine and caring. I also perceive the light as light. So when I close my eyes, I'm not seeing the backs of my eyelids. I'm not seeing blackness anymore. When I work, especially when I work with someone, I connect with them, and when I close my eyes, I'm now seeing like a endless flow of information, I guess, in the form of light. So it's
let's use the word light, because
yeah.
I mean that's what we use, right?
So
light.
yeah, so when I close my eyes, I see, especially when I'm working with somebody, and I am that light. So it's like that's what I am. And then when I'm working with the person with the metaphor of light, I am opening up their system, and I'm pulling that light down into them. I'm removing the obstacles, and I'm pulling in light to help illuminate the seeker's consciousness.
Yeah, and I do exactly the same. I open the system and pull in the light to get the healing energies into the system, so that they can work in the system. And of course, like if you say light, I mean the energies have they have different shades. There are lighter ones, there are darker ones. There are shades as well. That's how.
Yes.
So and when the energy gets pulled into the system, it just starts to work in different areas, and I pull it where it needs to go, where it needs to work, and so.
Yeah, and okay, so what are the different energies, Eva? How do you want to talk briefly just about the different, like what when we work with people, like say someone comes to you for healing and you sit in meditation, you talked about a baseline energy that's there, baseline transmission. It's in your meditations, it's the baseline when you're doing your healing sessions, right?
Yes. Yeah, so that's the energy of the Divine Mother. I call in basically, and it just comes. So by intention, energy work happens by intention. I bring it in, and I have a framework for the session. It's all made up by intention and the energy work in these frameworks.
And then you then can see obstacles, then you can use that energy in different forms to do different healings in the system.
So I get basically the energies, the base transmission. They show me where to work in the system, where the obstacles are, where the blockages are, what information is important for the person, and they just show me. And then I basically just share, or I work in these areas. For example, if there is something that needs healing, energy flows through my hands. That's how it works for my system. So I can just hold my hands for example, let's say, I don't know, in the heart area, there's a problem in the heart area, there's a blockage. So I can just hold the hands, and the energy flows through the hands in the heart. And yeah, and then the obstacle gets dissolved, or I remove it. So I actually work with my hands. So maybe that's interesting to share. I do everything with my hands. So some people can do it just with their focus. I also use my focus, but I just use my hands. So if I clear something, I'm actually like clearing like a window. Or if I remove something, I'm pulling it out, you know, so I'm actually using my hands. It's just easier because we have to have such a strong focus by doing this kind of work throughout the whole session. And it's very, very hard work. And if we just use the hands, it's like they replace the focus, and it's just so much easier. Yeah. I mean, if I have to hold my hands up there all the time, you know, it also, it's hard on the shoulders, but you know what I mean? Yeah, I work with my hands. Yes.
Yeah, and just I'm the same. So when I'm opening up chakras, I'm using my hands. When I'm pulling in light, I'm using my hands. If I see any, and again, when I'm looking at someone's system, I'll sort of see a 2D shape, an outline of that person's body. And I'll see all the chakras, and then I'll see that the outline of the person as white. And then if there's anything that's blocking, or that there's anything that's an illness, I'll use light to remove that. And I'll see that as darkness in their system. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. So I see the energy field as round. So I don't see the shape of the body, and I just know it's there. And I also don't see the chakras, but when I'm shown certain things to remove, I'm shown they are in these chakras basically. So I don't actually see the chakras. Yeah. And then I can work on those areas.
Yeah. Yes. And then also, I wonder, could you just talk a little bit, Eva, about how your healing, the transmissions speeds up the healing in someone's system? So versus somebody, say, who's like just trying to do their own self-help, they're meditating, they're practicing, forgiveness, and then versus they come to see you for a session. How do the energies accelerate the healing for that person versus doing their own practice to try and heal?
Yeah, I mean, working on an energetical level means if something gets done, it's done. So if I remove something, it's removed. If I replace it, it's replaced. If I reform it differently or whatever, bring different information in, it's basically done. And then it needs to manifest in the human body and in the life experience. And that's why it's very effective, and that's why it's so fast, because, it takes a few minutes to remove an obstacle, for example. And if you go to therapy and talk about, figuring first out, okay, which obstacle maybe is happening for that person, and then you look deeper and deeper, and if you want to do it intellectually, it just takes very long. But there, I just look at the person's energy field, I get the information, this and that needs to be done, and I'm just doing it, and it's done, and that's it. It's very simple. Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, so have you any topics that you want to, because I know some people have asked you some questions.
Yes. So because we're both working online, we use Zoom and YouTube videos. So people asked, how does it work that we can receive a transmission although you're not even there in person? How does it work remote healing and also receiving a transmission remotely? Yeah. So that was a really really interesting question. Yes.
Okay, and do you want me to answer that one, Eva?
Yeah, if you want. Yes.
Okay, so if we take it that consciousness is fundamental and everything is consciousness. Okay, we think that we live in an objective reality, but it's not really objective. It's everything is consciousness, and there is no space and time. So all of these energy transmissions, they exist as a frequency, and we can tap into them frequencies with our intent. And because there's no space and time, the videos can act as almost like a www.healingfrequency.com address. So you turn on the video, you hit play, and all of a sudden your consciousness is now linked to that healing frequency that had been, the connection had been made when you've done the meditation.
Yes.
So it's just a way for you to connect with that, and they don't disappear, because it's not like it comes and then it disappears. It's always there.
It's always there. And that's the thing, like when it's created, it's there on an energetic level, it's always there. And by opening up the laptop, for example, and sitting down with that intent, okay, I want to meditate now to this transmission, it's basically this www, what you just mentioned, you're dialing it by just doing this, opening the laptop or whatever. Yeah, and I mean, some people, if they already, if they do it more often, they can tap into the energies. For example, when we have a meditation in the evening and people know, okay, the meditation is on at this time, and they can't join on YouTube, for example, or on Zoom, they can just by intent tap into the energy and they will receive as well. So it's totally possible because it's there. And also on the next day, it would be possible because it's there. So it's created, and everything that's created is accessible. You just need to know how. And that's the interesting thing with the energy work, because everything happens with intention and intention. And that's what it makes it so fascinating, because it doesn't have any limits. The only limits are what we think, what is possible. And yeah, so it's limitless. Like you can create whatever you want, basically. That's what I find so interesting about it. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so anything else? Any other questions?
Yes. So people ask me, if you have a session and somebody does show up, for example, and you can still do the healing and record it, or I do the healing, you give the transmission. How does it work then that the person receives, although the person is not there? So the other way around, and it's just the same. I just wanted to share that too, because it's just the other way. It's all by putting the intention on that person. The person doesn't need to be on the screen. Sometimes people like to use photos to transmit it to a photo. It doesn't even have to be a photo. It's also enough to know, oh, it's the neighbor of somebody, right? So yeah, that's also what's so fascinating about this, because it just works,
Yeah, so you don't even have to know. So somebody could say this woman's son, and just as that's all you need, is that it's the son of this woman, and then you can put your intent to send the healing to that person. Yeah, and then it's the transmission can be just sent with intent. So you don't have to be in front of them. You don't even have to have Zoom open or, with the video. You can just think of a person. And this was very early on, was what I discovered, was I could just think of someone. I could think of them. I could picture them in my mind, and I could actually send that person a transmission. I could send healing energy or Shakti energy, and they would feel it. And then, I would practice. I would say, I think I did this with you as well, Eva.
Yes, you did.
I would say, okay, between a certain time, I'm going to send transmissions, and you can see if you can feel them. And you would come back and say, oh, at this time, I think you were sending me a transmission. And I'd be like, yeah, that was exactly when I did it. So it's very much that you can feel them. You could be driving your car, and then all of a sudden you'd be like, oh, I can feel the transmission coming in. Yeah, and if people are connected to you, for example, right, they go to your meditations and do one-on-ones or whatever, they can tap in, although not by intent, but if they drive and feel the transmission, it's a good chance that you are having a session at the moment. So they kind of tap into that as well, because it's all connected. So yeah, so a lot of people from my group will text me and say, oh, at such and such a time, I could feel the energy coming in really, really strong. And most of the times it's when I'm in a one-to-one session with people. So I'm working with someone just in front of me on the computer, I'm sending the transmissions, and it's actually going out to all of the people in the group. Yes. Yeah. That's so fascinating about it. Just through the connection, from the meditating in the group, been exposed to the energies will then go to them people, even when they're not in the sessions. Yeah, so everybody's receiving basically Yeah.
a lot more, like all the time. Yeah.
All the time,
Yeah.
the energies are coming in. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yeah. And then there was a question, I mean, it's more healing related, but people asked, okay, how can I start working with energy? So I get this question quite a lot. How can I start doing healing work? Yeah, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about it because, yeah. So first, if you feel drawn to do healing work, it's very good. And I always recommend people to start with learning a healing modality. Just pick something that resonates with you. There are a lot of modalities out there. There are very good teachers out there. You know, get something that somebody has done before. Maybe a recommendation would be good. And then go there and they will tell you all about this specific healing modality. The good thing is with the healing modalities, they're basically programmed. So they're pre-programmed and you just need to tap into then the energy that's pre-programmed basically. So you don't need to figure stuff out by yourself.
Yeah, they have a structure, don't they? They have a structure in place for you to work within.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you say, for example, you call in Reiki or Palawa healing, there is a structure there on an energetical level, and you just tap into this, and you know, okay, if I am tapping into this, I will transmit this energy, and that's it, you know. So that's what I really would recommend, to just start with doing something you're interested in.
So something as simple as Reiki level 1 and 2,
yes.
And one that both of us did was Palawa.
Yes.
Palawa energy healing. Yeah.
Yeah. So they just to share, there are two different kind of energy healing. So the Reiki works more on the body, and the Palawa healing more on the mental body. So yeah, it's just two different transmissions. And that's also very interesting because it's all light, right? It's all transmissions, but they're programmed for doing different things. Yeah. And then practice. That's what I say. Then use this whatever you learned. I mean, there's also a lot of information for the mind when you do a course like that. And that's also very important to kind of know your way around. What is healing? What does it do? What can I do with it? Who can I heal? It's just basic stuff. That's also very important to have a knowledge about it. And then, practice on friends, family, animals. I don't know what kind of transmission you're transmitting, but like practice and then see where it takes you. You know, is there more interested to do more? Where do you feel drawn to? Do you feel drawn to something different? And if you have like gifts, for example, they will start opening up. Like for some people, they just start opening up because they're using, for example, Reiki, like in my case, and after a while, I just felt, okay, there is something else coming in. I work with people who are into the healing, or they started doing healing and they report the same, or I get visions, or I start knowing, okay, I need to do this or that in the person's energy field. So they kind of get this higher information coming in for them, and then they kind of know what to do. But it's always good to have a framework. And
yeah. So okay, so anyone looking to get interested or get involved in energy healing, the first thing that they should do is to take up a modality. And yes. You would say, Eva, Reiki or Palawa.
I mean, these are the ones I worked with, but there are
same as me.
A lot out there, so I don't really know any other ones. But I'm sure there are really good ones out there. So yeah.
And these will give you a framework to, you know, a set of rules to work within. And what you would say then is to keep working with the energies, and then as you start to progress spiritually, you know, you're doing your healing practices on people, and at the same time still working on yourself and developing your own level of consciousness, that your own gifts will start to open up, and you'll move away from whatever you're working with, and then you'll develop your own set of tools and skills that are totally unique to you.
Exactly. So everybody has their unique gifts or cities, and you can only develop them by practicing it and by figuring them out, because nobody can teach you them. It's not possible. So it's all about like learning yourself, using them, learning them, feeling them. Also get feedback from people you work with, like how did it make you feel? How do you feel afterwards? How do you feel a few weeks later, and so on. So in the beginning, it's all about feedback as well, you know.
and let's just talk, Eva, just about like what them abilities, like how they'll show up for people. Like a lot of people seem to think that they have an idea of what it's going to be, and it turns out that it's never really the way they imagined it to be.
Yeah, but I mean that's in general something that happens when you work on the level, you know, with energies or with transmissions or on the spiritual path, right? It will never be as the brain, as the mind think it will be, because you can't, you know, it's an area where the mind doesn't really, is useful, but not like so useful. It's all about like experiencing it and feeling it in the body and seeing what it does. So it's all about that, and also then in the clients, but it's the same for your transmissions and your kind of work.
Sure. I mean, I get lots of people and they want to do what I'm doing, and I say to them, well, it's not that you're going to be doing what I'm doing, it's that this may be the path that gets you started, and you get really interested in what I'm doing, but what you develop will be completely different, because consciousness will never manifest exactly the same in two different people. It just won't. It will come true differently for everybody.
Yes, I mean, for the two of us, for example, it's very different, although we have the same source, but it comes through very different. And we are also not like, I'm not interested in doing your kind of work, and you're not interested in doing my kind of work. Because it doesn't feel natural, right?
Doesn't feel natural to me.
So it's all about what feels natural, and then you can grow from there. You know, it has to be natural, it has to be real, it has to be the highest truth, basically.
Exactly. Okay, and any more questions that you want us to go over, Eva?
I mean, we can talk about, because we were just talking about Reiki and Palawa, and you know, there's Shakti, there is light transmission, there's like all these kind of transmissions. So do you want to talk about the ones you work with, just briefly, that people get an idea? There are just different ones out there, but with the saying, it's all energy, it all comes, like in the long run, it all comes from the same source. It's just for different use, split up basically for different use. You like people use the analogy like a diamond, right? So there is one ray going into the diamond of light, and then it spreads in a lot of different ways. So that's a good one.
Or another one is it's sort of like the stained glass window in a church. It's the same light, but it's coming through in different colors. And okay, so Eva, so we've established that these energies and transmissions are really, really beneficial in terms of healing and awakening consciousness and quickening up the awakening of Kundalini energy. Are there any negative effects to them?
No, I mean, no, because...
Or are there any people who shouldn't receive them?
No, because they can only do what's for your highest good anyways. I mean, that's the intention we work with, right? The highest good for that person, and only the person should receive what the person can receive, basically, or what the person is supposed to receive. So and
I guess if they're not ready, they just won't feel anything, and the energies won't do anything in their systems. Yeah,
of course, you have to have the readiness, the openness, and the openness, basically. Yes.
Yeah. So okay, so pretty much anybody can receive healing, can receive transmissions, and that the energies will meet you where you are. It's not going to open you up to anything that you can't handle. It's just going to, the way I see the transmissions that I work with is that it's sort of like taking a flower, okay, and giving it enough light and enough water that it naturally just starts to blossom naturally by itself. We're not ripping it open and saying, I want this flower straight away. We're not forcing anything. It's just we're naturally helping the.
Yeah, and that's what I really like, you know, because it is a process. It's supposed to be a process, because we need to feel the changes. We need to experience the changes in life experience, in the body, in how we feel. So it's all about the process, because as you said before, it's never ending. So why would I force something that doesn't make me feel good. If I want to have a process and just how I can like handle it, my system can handle it, my mind or how I can handle it, that it can just, grow how fast it's supposed to grow, basically.
Yeah. And Eva, okay, so I know these transmissions, they speed things up, but is there such a thing as speeding things up too much? I mean,
not with those transmissions. No, not with those transmissions, because you can only receive what your system can receive in this moment. And it's also not the intent. The intent is everything should happen for the highest good of the person in a moment, right? That's the intention.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there are practices out there where people receive transmissions they can open more as they can handle. And I have a lot of them clients, or a few of them at least. They come to me and they say, okay, I don't feel good. I've received too much. I feel all over the place. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
My system is open and they just basically don't feel good. So I have them as well. Some people just don't want to wait and let it unfold naturally. They just want to figure it out faster, or want to know it faster. And I mean, it's possible, but it doesn't mean that it's good for the person. Yes.
So there's no negatives. Okay, but what can happen is that stuff can come up. So the samskaras can come up, the emotions come up, and they may have to deal with more stuff that they have to, human stuff that they have to work through. I
mean, it's good that you just clarified this, because that's what it is. It's just the opening is more, and more is there to deal with. So thank you for clarifying. It's just more to deal with, basically. Yeah. Because nothing can happen. Like, nothing can happen. It's just you have to face more. Yeah.
You have to face more. You'll have to face more. And look, we all know human nature is they want things yesterday, and they'll do things regardless. Even if I give people advice, they'll go and just do what they want anyway, regardless of what advice I give. So I'm just like, okay, do what feels right for you. That's always my advice, because I just don't go there anymore, telling people, giving them my advice, because they just don't listen. So the best thing I can say is do what you feel is best for you. Drop into your heart. And question, is this transmission for me? Is this teacher for me? Is this healing modality for me? Not just, aimlessly go out and do everything that you want, you think is going to help you.
Yeah. I mean, it's also a good point to what you just said is not to do like everything that's out there. So like multiple things, because, the process can also be interfered with if you what is too much, but if you mix up things, or if you mix up different transmission, different modalities, because one energy works in your system and they can stay for a while, right? So for example, they stay for a few days or a few weeks, even they can still work on your system. So manifestation, for example, of my healing sessions can last up to a few weeks later. So things will still manifest a few weeks later. And if you do multiple, you can, of course, as everybody's free will, but if you do multiple other healing modalities in between and so on, it's just the process gets cut off, or it can't happen. So, or it gets interfered with. So it's good if you do something, allow it to unfold, allow it for a while, to work on your system before you go to the next.
You just give it time, and you wait a couple of days, wait a couple of weeks, you see what benefits have come from the session.
And then it's always about listening to yourself. Okay, am I now ready to receive something else or do something else, or should I just wait? Because people ask me how often should we do sessions, for example, right? And I always say, how often you feel. Like, if you feel you need it more often, I would do it more often. And if you feel like you only come once or every few months, then just do it when, it has to feel right. That's all about that. Yes.
So rather than listening to your mind and your mind telling you need to do more and more and more, quieten the mind, drop into the heart, and then feel into should I do another session, and it's the very same for me, even because I get people that come into me, they're saying, okay, today's session was amazing, when can I do the next one? And I say, I never tell anyone when to come. I said, it's up to you. I can tell you the frequency where people seem to get the best results. I said, but it's ultimately up to you. Go away, take the next 5 days to see what changes are happening in your system. When you sit to meditate, is there a deepening in my consciousness? Are the thoughts getting quieter? Am I feeling more subtle bliss? And then listen to what comes up from your heart, not the mind. It's never the mind. It's always like, and for me, I was very much like that. I remember doing sessions with Elizabeth Rose, and I'd say, oh, okay, that's it. Maybe I don't need to do another session with Elizabeth. And then a month might go by, and then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I'd get, it's time to do another session.
It was exactly the same for me. Exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd just go, okay, that's it. I'll book it, and I'd book it. And I think that should be the same for everybody, that they come when their heart speaks to them, not their minds.
Yeah. I mean, it's easier said than done, because I remember times where I definitely had no access to my intuition. I really didn't. And I felt very lost. And of course, what do? You listen to the mind. I mean, back then I didn't even know, that there's the mind, it's a thing. So I thought I'm the mind. And if that's still the case, because I mean, I help, for example, people in sessions to strengthen their intuition. But if you don't hear it, then you can just pick somebody you trust, and you think what they say resonates with you, and what they share, maybe look into these things and see if they resonate. This could be also a way. I mean, that's how I did it, because I really didn't know what to do. I couldn't hear my intuition. So I'm just saying this because I know there are people out there who can. So it's there. It's happening.
Yeah. Okay, and should we talk about like people's direct experiences? Let's say, for instance, on one of my retreats, let's say, where the energy, you're sitting in it for days and days on end, and there's something to be said for actually being in the proximity of someone who can give these transmissions, that it's even stronger than doing it online.
Yeah, I mean, because first of all, there's a field created.
Yeah.
So in that field, basically the energy is contained in that field. Then there is also a lot of people. So if you have a group, the energies are also stronger in a group. Yeah. And then of course, when you're there in person and you transmit the Shakti, like if you give third eye Shakti, but I mean, you are actually touching people's forehead or their knees. So you're actually touching people, so you're transmitting through contact.
Yeah.
I don't work like that, for example. I don't touch people system. I don't need to, but that's your way of working. So that's also very interesting, a different way,
Yeah. Well, one of the things, so I would say that sitting in like, say, for instance, on Zoom and meditating in that energy, it's sort of a passive transmission. Whereas when you're on an event and I'm actually given like Shaktipat, and people come up and I'm actually touching them. So I would, for some of the transmissions, I would have two people sit either side of me, and I would put my hands on their knees, and then I would use my intent to send that energy out through my hands into that person's system. And the knee Shaktipat's usually done on a meditation that takes about 12 to 15 minutes. And the way I see that, it's sort of like charging up a battery with the Shakti. So I see it that their systems are like a battery, and the energy's moving up and up and up. And after the 15 minutes, they're charged. But then when I do third eye Shaktipat, I'm actually using the energy to pierce through the third eye chakra. I'm sending the energy in for direct transmission, and it can be done really, really fast. It's like, it's the speed in which I give the third eye Shaktipat is much faster. I can do that in 2 or 3 minutes. And the transmission comes from the thumbs directly into the third eye and straight into that person's system.
Yeah, it really fills up the system. Like you can just feel it. It's like a
Goes
liquid
into the
flowing
brain.
in. Yes,
It goes
yes,
into the
it
brain.
flows in.
Yeah.
It flows in. Yeah, yeah, and it quiets the mind, and it's really nice. Yes.
Yeah. And I
Mm.
guess like some of the, like, there is what you just spoke about, a blanket. So regardless if you're coming up and sitting or receiving the the in person where I'm touching you, there's a transmission, like there's a feel and a bubble that's created around the people who are there. And even just sitting there in the group, you're basically basking in the energy
Yes.
for hours and days on end.
Yeah. Yeah, and because you also do online retreats and online group sessions, and this is the same. It's in the group. It's just different because everybody's sitting in the group energy, and the group energy is just stronger, and you can like bathe in this group energy.
Yeah.
That's also different from a one-on-one. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and then also so the sat, that's a
Yeah.
different transmission as well.
Yes.
Do you want to share the difference between the sat and the shakti, because that's also interesting?
Okay, so the Shakti energy is pretty much when you're Kundalini. So okay, so firstly, not everybody has Shakti. Okay, and Shakti basically is when your Kundalini awakens and it rises through all of the different energy centers and eventually merges. Shakti and Shiva, they merge in the crown, and then that Kundalini sort of turns into like a field of Shakti. It's like a blanket of nice warm energy. And then that Shakti energy can be given to people, can be sent to people then, and it's like an injection into that person's system, and it can stimulate the Kundalini in someone whose Kundalini hasn't already awoken. Now, Shakti is within creation. So if you can imagine that our universe, our world and our universe is contained within sort of like what's the best word? Like a sealed off system. And we talk about that being, with all of that is within creation. So you and I are there, our consciousness is there, energies are there, information is there. Outside of creation is what's known as the absolute unbound manifest. It's like it's primordial consciousness before it became conscious of itself, and that's what we are before we were conscious, before we were beings. That's where we came from. And the supramental, sorry, I had a tractor going by. So the supramental force is pretty much when the soul of the seeker eventually retraces itself, it steps back all the way out of creation into that absolute nothingness, which is known as the Brahman. Okay, and the soul then merges and becomes one with that, and then it re-enters creation after a period of time, and on its descent back in, it pierces through the membrane, and it then becomes a channel, a dynamic channel to bring in them higher forces, and one of them is true consciousness. And the way I see true consciousness is that it's a descending force that people feel coming from above. They feel it coming in through the top of the head. It can come in through the mouth. It can come in through the back of the neck. And one of the first things that you'll notice when this energy starts to enter your system is like really, really nice states of meditation, equanimity. It's just like, oh, I could just sit here. You know, my thoughts don't bother me. Everything just feels absolutely perfect. And then over time, that energy will start to bring you into various states of samadhi. And samadhi is just basically like deep states of meditation. So there's nirvikalpa samadhi and there's savikalpa samadhi are the two main ones that are associated with this transmission. And over time, what's happening is it's pulling your soul back into itself for the remembrance of what you were before you became a being or conscious. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that,
And that's so interesting because there are just so many different transmissions out there for different uses, and they transform the system in a different way. So and yeah, that's because they have different informations in them.
yeah, and just quickly, I realized early on that I needed different transmissions. I noticed that the Shakti was working on my Kundalini, and the Kundalini, it was really helping fire that up and clear blockages, but it wasn't awakening my consciousness. It wasn't doing anything for my perceptions. So that's when I discovered that I had to receive the light transmission. And then I started to receive the light transmission, and consciousness started to awaken. And then also for me, what was the most transformative, and I'm not saying, when I say most transformative for me, I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying that what took me further was the supramental, the sat force. Yeah,
because it brings you in really deep meditation, and you can go deeper and deeper. And this also means expanding the system, so more, it can hold more light or more energy. And so really good.
So is there any other topics, Eva, that you'd like to talk about?
It's also a healing topic. A question I got. It's a woman I work with, and she is a healer, and she asked what she can do to make sure that the healing that comes through her is of the highest truth. And I mean, we were speaking about it before just a little bit, and it's all about intention. Okay, what intention you have when you start doing a healing session. So always connect to the highest truth. So basically, for me, it's always the Divine Mother. So I ask her to help to connect me to the highest truth, and the highest truth can be transmitted through me. And then also,
so it's like an affirmation, a statement that you're making in your mind.
Exactly, because it's all right. All energy work is like it's a statement. I frame how the session goes. I frame how it works. And the second thing is like working for the highest good of the person. I said this before already, but it's still important because then it's not on you to know what the person needs, but then it's like it's for the highest good of the person, and that's what needs to happen basically. And
So okay, so just to recap on that, so somebody who's getting into practicing energy healing, as they start their session, they could make it an affirmation, a statement to say that they're working with the highest good and for the highest possibilities to bring in love, light, truth for this person.
Exactly. And this sounds so, simple, but it's so profound, and asking, for example, a Divine Mother to help you with the session, it's just so profound. And what
about using intent to like create a safe space, to create a protective bubble around the two of you when you work?
I mean, I always do that. That's very important as well. So what I always do is I ground the person who I work with, so with Mother Earth, and I put a protective bubble around the person, also around me and around the session. And I always ask that everything happens for the person's highest good and my highest good and the highest good of all there is, basically. It's just that's the framework. And then it basically starts. Everything just starts happening, flowing. And it's fascinating also just to share a little bit about practical stuff from my work. So the energy flows, but then I just imagine how the energy flows through the system, what it does. For example, there is like a door on the top of the head. That's how I imagine it. And when I start a session, I open the door, and then the energy can flow into the system, and I feel people's energy field or in my system. So I then feel, okay, how the energy flows into the system, where it flows. And that's how it works. It's all intention.
All
and it's
intention.
Also that the next, and that's maybe the next question would be a good one to go into, because people were asking, okay, what's the difference between a one-on-one and a group session, for example? And it's all about how, like, when I offer a group session, how I set it up, what my intention is for the group session, how it's supposed to work, what I want it to do, how many people can do it, what they are receiving, and so on. So it's all like I'm creating this. So because it's not like if you do a group session with you and with me or with somebody else, it will be all different, because the person who are using the energies, they just a different framework basically, or different intents how they are using it. So you can't really compare. And yeah, so that's what I wanted also to say, because
Yeah, and let me just briefly explain what I do. So for instance, on my Zoom on Tuesdays and Fridays, I have my group, and I'll have 50 or 60 people turn up. They're all sat there, and what I'll say to them is, make sure you have your camera on, because if I can see you, my intent will go to you. Okay, so there is a baseline transmission that everybody is receiving. Okay, that baseline transmission is going out to everybody. So just by you logging on and sitting there straight away, or even before the session starts, you'll start to feel that transmission going. So you're sitting there. And then what I basically like to do is, I like to, especially for the new people, I'll see a new person and I'll pin that person up on my screen, and I'll send a direct transmission to that new person for a minute. And then I'll find the next new person. Oh, there's another new person. And I'll send that person direct transmission. I'll just pin them up and then close my eyes while I have them on the screen, stay with them for a minute, and then move to the next person. And then I'll eventually start to go through all the different people, you know, the regulars. But it's like, by me looking at them, my intent is sort of ramping that up. And then, you know, even by people like engaging in conversation with me before we start, there's a few of them that have discovered by engaging that the energy starts going to them. And
it flows. Yeah,
it flows because that's what we're doing.
But it's also like with texting, writing emails, and like audio messages, it's the same, you know. So
it's so there's a few people in the group discovered that by texting me, you know, by there being a back and forwards conversation on text, they start receiving energy transmissions while we're texting. And my text messages have gotten, you know, to the point where I can't reply to everybody.
And I can just share a little bit how I do it in the group meditation, for example.
Sure.
So you work on everybody individually. I work on everybody at the same time, for example. That's just because this is my intent. This is my session, how I set it up, and that's how I work. So just for people who want to understand it, you know, what's better? Should I do, you know, this group or this one-on-one or whatever? It's all about what intention is there, and you will receive anyways, you know, in no matter what kind of setting you're going to, basically.
Yeah, and it's very similar for me as well, Eva, especially on my Zoom. My first intent, and it just runs. It's like I'm facilitating it, so I'm the one who's given the program, and basically I would do the same. I would seal everybody in, so nothing negative can come from external. And then what I would do is I would just give I run the program to insulate everybody from one another, so their energies aren't interfering with one another. So say if somebody's having a release, the release isn't been transmitted to somebody else in the group. So I make sure I insulate everybody so they're not picking up stuff from the other people in the group.
I do the same. I do exactly the same. Yes. So everybody gets an individual little protection around.
And what so and how I discovered that was that you know, in some of the sessions I would be working with the sat, and then I would feel other energies, and I'd be like, oh, I can feel, you know, it would be like minor nothing bad, but I would be like, oh, I can feel, you know, minor irritation coming in the form of like an energy. And then I'd look, and then I'd say, I would be able to figure out who it was coming from. You know, they were using their intent to bring in their own energies into the group. And then one day I just went, okay, I'm just going to put a bubble around that person. And I just, with my intent and my finger, I just drew a bubble around them with my intent. And all of a sudden the energy just stopped. Just stopped, just totally cut out. And then all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, the person left the group.
Okay, yeah,
They just
interesting.
left. I saw the camera turned off and they just left because all of a sudden they weren't able to do and they weren't doing anything bad. There was nothing, there was no bad intent. But it's just, they were coming into a group and they didn't have the permission to do what they were doing. That's what
Yeah.
So anything else to add to that?
Yeah, there was just something, hang on. Oh yeah, so, and when people, because again, about the intent, so people say when they start working with energies or they say, okay, I don't trust it, or I don't really know if it really works, because mostly I don't trust it. And that's the practice. That's where the practice comes in, doing it over and over again so that you just know it works.
Does this feel good?
Yeah. And that does it feel good? And also you just know. And then when you know, you can create new things as well, because you just know it works. And
you'll your own intuition, your own inner guidance will start to come into play. Okay. And you'll go to somebody and you'll go, this doesn't feel right. This, it just doesn't feel right. And it's not that there's anything bad. It's just that maybe that transmission isn't for you at that particular stage along your journey. It's just like, and that's something that'll develop. You'll go in, you'll sit in a group and you'll just get an inner no. It's just like, no, that's not for me. I'm out. And that was happening for me early on. Yeah,
I had this experience also 1 or 2 times, when I meditate with somebody else, just to see how it feels like. But then it's also, just go, it wasn't for you maybe on that day. Just go. Even when I had a phase where my nervous system, I was very sensitive, and I also then didn't meditate with your transmissions for a while, like for about 2 months, because it just didn't feel right. In that moment, because I was so sensitive. And
I don't take offense.
I'm not offended in any way. No, it wasn't your transmission. It was just,
Yeah, sure.
I couldn't handle it at that time, and that's totally fine. Taking a break.
Yeah. Take a break from the transmissions. Yeah,
exactly. Maybe we should add this as well, because before we were saying, okay, sit in transmissions as much as possible, but it has to feel right. It has to feel nice, because if you feel like it doesn't, then it's maybe on that day it's not, or for that week, take a break. Yeah.
And Eva, just also I want to ask about okay, so we've established that the benefits of you having a spiritual seeker or an aspirant sitting in the energy of a realized master or teacher, okay, and it's speeding up the awakening process in that person. Okay, so let's just talk briefly about the individuals themselves. And just because they've realized the highest truth, does that mean that their human is clear? And
I mean, from a healing point of view, not really, no.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean like that, no. So you have to do the healing work as well. You have to clear out the human. You have to clear out everything that's in the way, basically, of the highest truth. And you need to be honest enough with yourself to see this, and to wanting to clear this out of the system.
To clear as the human in the, so your human evolution doesn't necessarily equal your level of realization.
No. It doesn't equal.
So you can realize these states, right? You can literally have awakenings. You can develop these really amazing gifts, and then the human side could be really, really messy. It could be easily triggered. It can have all sorts of traumas and reactive.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why ideal is doing both, like raising the consciousness and also healing the system. That's just the best combination, doing both, because I mean, I don't know if it's so nice to, for example, to sit in these bliss states, or have this openness and then have the messy human around. I mean, I don't have that experience, but I can just imagine it can't be really nice, because you are so much more aware of what's going on, and then you have the human mess there. So you mean you're so much more aware of the human mass as well. Yeah, so
it has to be both. Like, I mean, like, you want both. You want to awaken your consciousness. You want to have, realize the absolute, and then also you want your human evolution to be, a really high standard as well. Especially if you're a teacher. Especially if you're working with students.
Oh yeah, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. I mean, it helps you to work if you have your own stuff in your system. It's might be hard to know what's your stuff or what's coming towards you from like a student,
Yeah.
So seeing the difference, and when you're really clear, you can actually see, okay, if people project stuff on you, or it's theirs. So it's a lot easier for you to do your job, basically, and also to help them better, because you just know, okay, it's not mine, it must be definitely theirs, and you can help them better from that position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So anything else? Any other quick questions? I'm also getting the impulse to do a demonstration.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll both do a quick meditation, and anyone watching or listening, if they just tune in, they'll feel the transmission.
Yeah. So you mean just like a meditation transmission?
Yeah. Quick. But have we finished? Are we finished?
Yes,
or is there anything else?
No, now not.
Okay. So this is very spontaneous, and okay. So there may be people watching this on YouTube, and what I would say to them is just to close their eyes and to meditate along. And then also anyone who's listening on one of the podcast platforms, literally just close your eyes, meditate, and then we'll let you know when we finish.
And while driving, don't close your eyes.
Exactly. If you're driving, and don't listen to this part.
But no, you're receiving anyways.
Okay. So we'll both start now. Okay. Okay, I think that's enough. Very good. So, okay, so just Eva, just to share with people that if they meditated with that and they could feel the energies and they want to, you know, have more of it, they can connect with me and you.
Yes.
So let me just tell you. So Eva's website is em-healing.com, and Eva does one-to-one sessions. And she also does mini group sessions, and then she has a Zoom meditation every Thursday at 8 p.m. UK time, 9 p.m. Central European time. And
also I upload a YouTube video every week. With channel healing, with a channel healing transmission in it.
Yes. Once a week onto your YouTube channel as well. And the YouTube channel is called the same, EM Healing. Okay. And then if anyone wants to get to look up me, my website is truespiritualawakening.eu. And similar to Eva, I do one-to-one sessions, I do mini group sessions, and I have a Zoom group meditation that I do every Tuesday and Friday at 9 p.m. UK time, and they're open to everybody. So you can come and meditate. And then as well, I have a YouTube channel that you can go and meditate with the recordings from their meditations.
And you have a lot of useful videos as well, like explaining all what you do, like really useful videos. Yeah,
so I think we've probably just covered everything. I think, I mean, there's probably, we could sit talking for longer, but I think we've gotten through most of the things. I
think we've been talking for a while. How long?
Okay. Pretty long. So we'll leave it at that. So I'd just like to thank you, Eva, for
thank you, Gareth,
for being my co-host, and thank you to the listeners and the viewers for watching and listening in. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.